Ways and Means, July 9th, committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Here.
Alderman Gould,
Here.
Alderwoman Tice,
Here.
Alderman Erger. All members are present.
Great, thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval or amendment of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes or other items to add or remove? All right, any objection to approving by acclamation? All right, it'll be so approved. Item 3 is the report of committee chair and alderman. I don't have a report except, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, but if, to the extent we don't, we need another meeting to talk about the items on the agenda today, should we talk about maybe adding in another meeting or?
Absolutely.
Calendar's out.
23rd?
Does the 23rd, if we need it, work for the committee?
Well, could I ask a question?
Sure.
So we also have the regular August, we're going to miss the July meeting at this point if we don't approve it tonight. So do we need to have a special meeting? Is there, could we combine it on the, I don't know what is on the agenda for the 6th?
I think we could combine it, 6th meeting August?
August 6th, yes, correct.
August 6th.
And
Okay.
do we need another, I guess we could judge whether we need us.
I think we can wait till after you've covered most of the items on the agenda tonight and then revisit this topic.
Okay, well, are you all at least available? Yes. Okay, and at 5:30 would be the time.
Yeah.
On the 23rd?
On the 23rd.
So I feel like that's a big hurdle to clear for scheduling purposes. So we can revisit it, but everyone will be here. Okay, Alderman Gould.
The only thing that I have in my report is just as a reminder, way of reminder for just everybody as we start to think about this. We have a pretty high debt burden for an extended period of time, and then there's also limited ways that the city receives revenue. There are, tax increases that could potentially be there, but I would say that that's maybe not something that this community is probably interested in doing. Redevelopment that could spur more sales tax revenue coming in with the existing revenue that we have. We're trying to do as much as we can there to encourage that, but that may take some time. The other way to find new revenue to pay for additional expenses, including benefits and salaries, is potentially reduction in personnel or services, and I don't think that that's something that we ever really want to try to, we'd like to try to avoid that as much as possible, both for our residents and for our staff. And so I think, when we think about the compensation and percentages or in the numbers that we have, I think we just have to be really careful about what implications those have down the road. And these aren't just one-time increases. These are compounding increases that have to be budgeted and balanced. I think that the study that we have in front of us is very different than what we've done in years past. And so comparing them based on that, I think is not something we need to really get into doing. So I think this sets us up with having the tools to be able to evaluate faster and adjust quicker to adjust compensation for market changes, which I think puts us into a better position across the board. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
Alderman Erger.
No report.
right, we'll move on. Item 4 of the agenda is city administrator reports. 4A is the class action coverage update.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sims. I'm providing you with an update on the class action coverage. We asked Thomas McGee to go into the marketplace and see whether we could get quotes for a class action coverage. He provided me an update last week, Monday. They're still working on it. They don't really have anything to report yet. In board docs, I provided his, in quotes, the update that he specifically sent me, which says, still searching for a policy that specifically covers class action claims. Likely, and to date, we've not identified such a policy. Policy that would cover for certain perils not covered in a standard policy. They have a division called Captive Division that would look into creating class action coverage for the members of Slate as well. So I'm waiting for updates that would say for me definitively, yes, we found something and this is the cost, or no, we found nothing. So that's really where we are in terms of the class action coverage update.
RF, or just so we made inquiry, we've not found anything yet. Okay. All right, 4B is the workers' compensation insurance renewal slate coverage.
So the renewal year starts July 1st, and so that was last week. What we're seeing is a 35%, 36%, 36.9% increase in our premiums from last year. Factors leading to the cost is the fact that you're seeing the 15.32 increase in salaries for all employees. Also, we're seeing an increase in what is called a mod factor or more mod experience, which means that the number of injuries over a 3-year period continues to have reconstituted the safety committee that's headed by Tangela, the HR manager, and the fire chief, Chief Burney, Assistant Chief Burney, who engage departments and analyze injuries, and try to identify ways that we can better inform our employees, whether it's stretching or, just common sense things so that they don't get injured. So that's the only real option we have, educating our employees for their own betterment and obviously for the city so that it frees up money to do other things instead of paying workers' comp premium. So we're seeing the cost going up on that. Also, in board docs, this is something that this committee has focused on over, I'd say, the last 3, 4, 5 years, is what are we doing as the Slate Board to reduce the fund balance deficit, and you'll see that we continue to bring that down, which is a positive. So this was effective July 1. That's the update on workers' comp.
And you're not needing any action
No
from
action.
us at this time?
Right.
Questions? All right, not seeing any. 4C is the liability, general auto, and police insurance renewal slate coverage.
That also is effective July 1, and we're continuing to reduce the deficit in the liability program for general auto police. That premium is also going up. And what you'll also notice is the Slate Board has the ability to do a special assessment on its members. We're not doing that. Instead, the rates are set in such a way that we're asking our members to pay a little bit more. We're not calling it a special assessment, a little bit more so that we continue to bring that deficit down. The cost for that is $137,000. It's not significant when you compare that to workers' comp.
And also no action required for the committee at this time on that item. All right, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is old business. 5A is compensation and benefit study.
Have questions? Is Rick online?
I think I see him.
I am online.
Do you have any questions for Rick, holdover from the last meeting? Otherwise, we'll just go straight into the financial analysis. Have Michelle start that presentation. Go ahead and do that.
I don't have any.
Perfect.
I'm sure I will have.
Okay.
You know I'll have questions.
There we go. Michelle.
Hi, good evening. Before I get started, the objective is to determine the salary compensation philosophy and funding mechanisms based upon, can you hear me?
Yeah, we were hearing from someone watching remotely that it's difficult to hear, so if you all could just be sure to speak into the microphones, that's great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
We did the 4 percentiles, which were presented over 3 years in 2 funds. So the general fund and the Park Stormwater Fund actually pay wages. Park Stormwater pays about 20% of the wages. So this was no small task. Internally, it took HR, myself, Bola, and Eric a little bit of time to figure out the mechanisms and then to make sure that we did this holistically and appropriately. So we did do a labor model for 2024 per person, per department, per each percentile per year. So it was quite the task. So once again, we're going to determine the salaries and go through the study and each percentile along the way. The first slide that we're going to talk about is what does the 2024 budget actually look like? So I'm going to actually pull it up on mine as well so I can see. So this slide that we're looking at is how we inherited the 2024 budget as of January. So the general fund's revenues, the general fund expenditures, what did that surplus look like when you guys adopted it? Also in January, you guys approved those of us in the 75th to go to the 95th percentile, as well as the retention incentive program. So those items are what is displayed here and what the potential fund balance would look like for both funds. When you look at the Park Stormwater Fund, the revenue and expenditures do not match the budget book exactly because we extracted the Brentwood bound numbers. The Brentwood bound numbers don't make it look holistic. So this is how it would function and how it should function on its own. And then we took those items which have currently been paid for and inherited and ran them through the current fund balance without addressing revenues or any other sort of expenditures, highs or lows. This is what has been adopted, and these are the things as where it stands today. Any immediate questions?
I think this is generally how I run the meeting, but if questions come up, please feel this is an open forum.
So if nothing changes and nothing is decided, this is where we sit, and these items were voted on and agreed upon as of January. Okay. So the total compensation cost, it is different than the total compensation cost which was presented by PayPoint HR. And the reasons for that is that we internally took these labor models and they inherently include anything associated with wages that would be impacted by the potential of these discussions, such as your overtime cost, your holiday cost, your shift officer pay. Those types of items in our labor model have been inserted into these types of analysis, as well as any benefits associated with each employee. So if you were to look at the budget book and you find employee benefits and up, all of those numbers are sort of represented in this. So it's full-time pay, overtime pay, part-time pay, shift officer pay. Those are inherently the differences that are driving this per percentile based upon what PayPoint HR presented. So that's what's driving the higher number, because we would inherently inherit a higher number just by association of all the other pays and benefits. Any questions or concerns about that?
So is this the cost of doing this in 2024? this
It'll be the
slide.
cost of doing it in 2024.
2024.
For the entire whole 2024 and 2025, and also an estimate of what 2026, when we start to look at the numbers. But yes, to inherit it for
Per
24.
year.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it would go up a little in the future year.
And
like
you'll
just-
see that with per one, but yes, this is the cost for the entire year. Yes. So this next slide talks about what it would cost for the general fund and the Park Stormwater Fund per percentile should some of these other conversations, which come later in this slide, not be discussed. So the revenues are pretty stagnant. The expenditures would go up at this significant rate depending on which percentile would be chosen. And this could potentially be the overall impact. And once again, this doesn't take into account whether somebody retires or, turnover or items like that. It really was a labor model based upon all the known factors of today. So this could potentially be the impact. Over the last few weeks, we've sat at tables, we've asked for ideas, we've relooked at the budget, and I think that the next slides will sort of help us along with that conversation. So this slide talks about budget recommendations and adjustments. So based upon some of the known factors that are known today, additional revenue, when I look at the budget and I look at the audit and where we're at in our investment ladder, Brad, who does the investments for us, currently has us laddered out for 3 years. We're starting to ladder out into 2027. The audited number for 2023 had us doing a general fund interest income at $245,000. We did not budget that. I think we budgeted close to, I want to say 10 or, anyway, there's a level of funding there in which I think we could make that adjustment, inherently agree to that. And then there are conservative estimates and revenues in general, and right now they're trending in the sales tax and the use tax at a level of above around 10%. Last in May, it was 20%. Right now in June, they're at 10, but they're sort of hanging there. So I think potentially giving that and then talking about the closing of Hanley Station and the Meridian, the 2 TIFs are closed. We're waiting we've notified the state, we've notified county of that closure, and then we'll start to inherently get those funds. I do believe we'll inherit those funds no later than fourth quarter of this year, which is where the $200,000 sort of number comes from. So known factors are that revenue will potentially go up and is going to go up for 2024 based upon the interest being earned, which we talk about every month at the board meeting, as well as the closing of the 2 TIFs. And then a manner and a way in which to decrease expenditures. And looking at the debt schedule, inherently there is a $6 million debt, which the city of Brentwood pays overall. EDST currently pays for one of the series of the COPs at a rate of about $2.5 million. They generate around 3.7 to 3.8, depending on the year. They're fairly new in their 3-year existence, but they have been adding to their surplus at a rate of over $1 million. Currently, one of the other series of certificates at around 2.7 million is paid through Park Stormwater, but it is divided up among General Fund, Park Stormwater Fund, and Capital Fund to pay for the debt. So inherently, when we talk about expenditures for the General Fund, it picks up $589,000 of that debt. Capital picks up about 1.1 million, and then Park Stormwater picks up the other difference. So there is another sort of 2.7, 2.3 million in debt being picked up by these 3 funds. The EDST can and currently only funds a series of debt. In looking at this, it would be my recommendation for consideration that we consider potentially relieving the general fund and potential Park Stormwater Fund of their debt requirements for that and ask EDST to pick it up. I used the rate of around $1 million just to keep it simple for financial purposes and other items like that. So the consideration of relieving the general fund of potentially $580,000 and then the potential of the additional revenue from the closing of the TIFs and the interest sort of paint a different picture, which is sort of shown in these other slides. Any questions on the potential of EDST or some of the revenue sources?
I have a question on the EDST.
Yes, ma'am.
Does their board need to approve using this money, or does the Board of Aldermen, like, who has final approval for that?
Both.
It's both.
So we would need to schedule a meeting of the EDST board and present this to them, and they would vote. Then we take that outcome to the board. But it's the board's decision that really trumps
The
what
Board of
action.
Aldermen, okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
So just so I'm clear on the EDST, what you're suggesting, since we haven't really earmarked or allocated money, that money to go toward anything, you want more of that money to go to paying down debt so that it frees up some of the money in the other funds to go toward.
Yes, the EDST, like I said, currently they pay for the 2019 certificates of participation. So the 2018 ones, I believe, are the ones being picked up by the other three
Stormwater and
operating funds. EDST cannot be used to pay for salaries, but
Right.
knowing that you have this additional debt laying out there, the potential of them picking up the $1 million, they would still potentially add to the reserves at a rate of around $200,000 to $250,000 a year, based upon the current conservative trends of revenue. So they wouldn't be losing their reserves with this recommendation, as long as trends continue to hold steady as they have. In 2021, EDST had 3.7 million, in 22, 3.8, and in 23, 3.6. They currently pay 2.5 million in a debt series. So the ability to pick up that potential additional $1 million exists, and it did exist with the audited numbers from 21 to 23, and still allow them to grow their fund balance.
Okay. And then we would, I think we used EDST for something recently, right? So for 2024, would we need to apply EDST if we, to some of this deficit that we have, and potentially increased deficit, depending on what percentages?
The answer is yeah. I mean, if you look at the table at the bottom of the slide, it shows what the current fund balance is for 2024. The estimate includes the transfer of the $1 million and also the 2.8 for the purchase of the garage. Still leaves you $2.4 million in fund balance, and then you see it increase about that $250,000 every year based on the remaining funds, even after helping out with the 2018 COPS payment.
Okay, thank you.
And it's been a long time since I've looked at that whole long payout chart for this, and I know it's way out in the future, but don't we have a bigger payment at the end? And this, assuming revenue trends are like they are now, is this $250,000 still enough to get enough money to make that larger payment at the end, if I'm remembering that chart correctly?
It actually runs to 2044, and it's on page 27 of your.
45?
What page?
Yeah, but yes, the payment does increase. The payment does increase in a couple of years, but how the economic development sales tax has been growing, maybe we want to take another look at that, to be certain.
Yeah, I mean, it does increase. Can I see this?
You may.
Sorry.
Wait, I'm sorry, I brought my book, but I don't, what's the page?
Page 27. If you see, it does jump up from 2.3 to 2.6 in 2018, and then 2.6 to 3.1. But
It does.
sure, the increase is tied into that 2017 COPS payment. So the increase in the 2018 COPS is related to that payoff of the 2017 capital fund certificate of participation.
So the 2017 will be paid off, and then it can pick up more of that payment.
And then, when was EDST passed? Because I know when it was passed, I think it had a 25-year sunset,
2018?
2018. And I believe it's got a
Yeah.
25-year sunset on it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, we just need to, if we're relying on EDST to pay for some of this, that goes away at some point. You know.
Exactly, yes. And, the good thing is that the city code requires that we do a three-year out budget, forecast 3 years out. So I think we need to be forward-looking and identify potential challenges way before it happens, and we continue to do that. during every budget cycle.
And I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure the 2018 cops and 2019 cops pay off on the same year. So when that sunsets, you'll still have the final payment of 2018 freeing up that tax, just general fund and rec and stormwater fund at the same time.
Okay, so, no, it's 19 years away, but like that last year, we're gonna owe 13 million. So will this amount of reserves saving, like, are we gonna keep capturing enough in reserves so that when that time comes, we're not like laying people off in that year so that we can pay this, this off?
I think that's a good question.
Okay.
I'm not prepared to answer that
I mean, I know it's
tonight.
way out, but that's
Right.
just, we need to think about it now.
But I think we need to go back and take a look at that
Okay.
and come back at the next meeting and share some thoughts that we've had. I mean, so these would be seriously wild projections for us to go that far out. But what our agreement with UMB also requires is that before that last payment is made, that we have sufficient amount of money in our trust account to pay a majority of that. So we just need to go back and look at the numbers and make sure that we can definitively say the city would be able to make that payment.
Okay, thank you.
You know, Bolo or someone over at that panel, might you keep a running list of things to that they can't be fully answered tonight, that we can then
Kelly's doing a
back
fantastic
and
job with that.
address,
Be listening to it again.
rather than having to roll the tape later.
Next slide. So this takes into the consideration the potential revenue of the investment interest, the closing of the TIFs and capturing that at fourth quarter, as well as the EDST picking up the dollars for the payments for the general fund, relieving that expense in the general fund, and then relieving the expense in Park Stormwater Fund. So it takes on those two assumptions. And you can see the difference in the fund balance now and where it remains positive for 24, 25, and 26 in both funds, and at the rate that it remains positive. Once again, 24 for general fund is lower and significantly lower because we are potentially inheriting the entire year of 24 for the compensation study, as well as the two items, those budget adjustments that were done on January 1st for the 75th to the 95th, as well as the 3% incentive that was just issued. So this is an all-encompassing view of what it would potentially look like at the 50th percentile with the factors known today. The next one talks about the 60th percentile and what that would potentially look like and the impact on that on our current fund balance and reserves. Then we ran it for all four scenarios. So here is the impact potentially for the 70th percentile for wages and benefits and all items associated, and then the 95th percentile. Any questions about the percentile data?
Can't just magically find money somewhere?
This was quite the exercise.
I guess percentage of our total budget currently is dedicated to salary and benefits. I couldn't really figure that out. There's several slides. Yeah, there's 45% for personnel services, but I don't know if that's for,
From the general
that's for
fund.
general fund. But for all
Exactly.
funds on 34, it's 45%, basically.
That number is skewed because of Brentwood Bound, because that includes the capital expenditures for Brentwood Bound for the year as well. Why you see a larger capital outlay.
Okay. I mean, I guess so we're about to get into budget discussions, and I'm sure every department's going to have additional asks and capital expenditures, and I guess the question becomes, how much really can we afford to tie up before even getting into the budget discussion? Because any philosophy we decide now or within the next month, that locks us in. I mean, to a certain, we've got a significant percentage of our budget that is going to debt service. We know off the top, that's, what is that? That's 22 and a half or 22.25% of the budget goes to debt service. So then we're, and then we got currently 45%. If we increase this, it's hard to tell what kind of percentage that is. And then what's left is what everybody has to work with. And I'm just not sure.
Part of trying to accomplish this and make it meaningful was I did work with the departments to submit budgets as they would know them as of the end of June towards the beginning of July. So part of that does encompass this. It doesn't encompass the capital portion of it because we stayed pretty focused on the general and park stormwater fund, but the departments inherently have been very mindful about the ask and sort of how we get there. So it wasn't the full budget exercise, but they were asked to sort of submit, be very mindful of what are your wants, what are your needs, what are your personnel, adding personnel, not adding personnel. So this was a really all-encompassing exercise of trying to make sure we addressed sort of those concerns before we started.
So if we make any of these decisions now, and then we get into budgeting, we're not going to be surprised with like, oh, there's a.
The hope is that there are no surprises. I'm not saying we're not going to be surprises, but this was an all-encompassing conversation with department heads, with staff. Please submit your budgets. Once again, what you think they can be in June, knowing that we still have potentially 6 more months of the year left, and some unknowns. But some of the known cost of what we know are coming towards us and at us, this wasn't necessarily done in a vacuum. So we did work with the department heads and ask them for those costs and what they thought they would be 3 years out and their known factors.
As a reminder, we will be starting the budget process next month. Okay.
I was just about to ask about that. So we are starting the budget process, and usually we look at revenues first. Is that next month?
Yes. So we will be sharing more detail on revenue line item sources and the projections that are being made. And Michelle talked earlier about how we've been very conservative, but looking at a trend for the past 3 years, there's an opportunity to increase some of those revenue sources, which is what she's done here. So we'll be having that discussion like we typically do with Ways and Means for you all to engage us in a discussion on your level of comfort with what we're projecting. So tonight, I would recommend that maybe your discussion focus on which one of the percentiles, you support. And in addition, if you support retroing to January 1, which is what we've modeled in here for you. So then after the meeting, your next meeting, and you look at the revenue sources, I think that would be your first check mark saying, okay, this affirms that we can go forward with the percentile you've chosen tonight. Also, we're going to be very mindful that your expenditure budget to the departments cannot just grow, great double-digit increase. We can't afford that. And so typically when department directors submit something that we don't have the capacity to fund, we will generate a list for you showing you what we have taken out of the budget. And then, once again, you engage the department directors when they present their budget. Okay, is there room to add this? If not, we support what was presented, and I think you typically do. So I would not be in a hurry to make a recommendation to the board for the next meeting, quite frankly. I would kind of slow play this so that you have a better level of comfort going into this.
So I would say, I would definitely like, first of all, the confidence that I personally have with the financial information we're receiving compared to all the other previous times I've been on this board, it's like much higher. So thank you for the thoughtful process that you all went through to get us these numbers. Also, having said that, I would really like to go through the revenue projections, because I think we do that really pretty thoroughly as a board, and, you know, it's our job to think about taxpayer dollars, and so I like the proposal to do that at the next meeting and really look line by line to see if, you know, like, I don't know, the taxes for home phone, you know, goes down every year, but like, are there some where maybe are there other places where we think, you know what, we under there, let's add a little bit there. So I would like to really do that and see if we can find money you didn't find, or question assumptions that you made. And I would definitely like to retro this to the beginning of the year. I think that's more than, we can't not do that. So I think with that expectation, it gives us time to be thoughtful.
With regard to the next meeting, have, I'm not prepared to make a recommendation. I want to say I want to be in the 100th percentile, but I mean, you know, in terms of what's practical, you know, that's the reality is something different. But can we just continue the analysis of the different percentiles as we go along with the revenue? So that, I think that is going to carry into what we ultimately may adopt as our philosophy, understanding that what we did before and the comparators that we use is entirely different than what we're doing now. But I would just like to see, I would like to continue to see these numbers and
This board can't, or this committee can't decide on the percentile alone, right? That has to
You
go to the
make a
board.
recommendation to the Board of Aldermen.
Yeah.
But I
yeah.
think that there would be at least some kind of recommendation, or at least we plowed the fields and, you
understood,
know,
yeah.
we're gonna we'll send it up eventually to have a larger conversation.
Right,
but
if the revenue
or-
projections, you know, during that next meeting changes significantly one way or the other, there will be changes made in the analysis, and, you know, we bring that back. So, you know, Kelly will probably be sending you more special meeting dates, because we do have more meetings scheduled during the budget process. So there'll be ample opportunities for you all to discuss that.
And just so I'm clear, I mean, even at the 50th percentile, everybody on staff basically gets an increase, yeah? So, I mean, your staff would get an increase retro, even with all of the increases we've done recently, with any of these percentiles that we have before us. Okay.
So do we have kind of a clear picture of what we're gonna be discussing again in terms of the next meeting? I mean, in terms of, but we'll have the
Right.
revenues.
So
and-
the next meeting will be, okay,
Yeah,
Alderwoman Tice.
I have other questions about this benefit thing, but let's finish the salary piece.
Okay.
But do we want to, I mean,
Oh, yeah, I thought of that as a
I
separate
didn't,
and
if you were
independent-
wrapping the meeting up, I'm like, no,
Oh, no,
I
I
have
was
more.
not. I was.
Okay, sorry.
I was wrapping this presentation up, and expecting that we would then pivot to benefits. So I consider that to be a
Yep.
different.
So without putting anyone on the spot, do you have a sense of a percentile you're leaning toward? Would you like to hold off?
I prefer to hold off on that.
What about the E EDST?
I am positive about moving the ETSD dollars.
I mean, I am too. I just am also cautious that we need to forecast out because that goes away, right? So I don't want it to leave us, 16 years down the road, 17 years down the road that like, oh, shoot,
And that analysis will be presented
yeah,
in August as well.
yeah. I mean, but for now, it seems like a good application of EDST is paying down debt that it was used for.
And so I think one of the last statements that Rick made at the last meeting was how we adjust the salary scale using the CPI index as budget permits. And I presume you know what that means as budget permits. And so, Michelle, what did you model into the salary scale, or Tangela, what did we model?
Yeah, we did model in the CPI for 25 and 26, so they include the normal scale as well as the 5-year average of CPI, which averaged about 2.7%. So for 25 and 26, the dollars and the information includes a CPI adjustment as well.
And that is new to this process, and that allows us to stay competitive quicker without having to do compensation studies every 2 years. But when we do, then we can see where we stand and make any further adjustments. Is that?
Rick, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, that's generally the desire. There's going to always be job titles that move out of alignment, over time, and that's just normal and natural. Under a normal set of economic circumstances that's going on in the country, I mean, a comp study should be designed that it lasts a good 4 or 5 years, 6 years. That's reasonable. Again, anything else, exactly to your point, you're spending taxpayer dollars for something that you shouldn't need, as long as you're able to maintain things. Now, there are going to be exceptions, that different titles where it's hard to fill or whatever, that you may want to look at on a piecemeal basis on the interim, and that's good and fine. But for a wholesale, study, again, the intention and the way this whole project was designed is so that you don't have to do that, and that it does become kind of a living mechanism that you can adjust salaries, going forward in a responsible way.
Well, I appreciate that because I'd much rather pay salaries and other things with taxpayer dollars than having studies done every 2 years. So
I agree.
So I also presume that, Rick, you will probably be back for the next meeting and present the benefits report, or are we
what-
moving on to that one?
Are we
You have
asking
questions?
questions? I mean,
You
I
have
skimmed
questions?
it, and it's not
Okay.
really a document that should have been skimmed. So that, since we
Yes.
just received it midday.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm all right with putting that over. I mean, I don't want to have a missed opportunity. And I'll be candid with you, I was in trial for a big chunk of the day, so I kind of, was I didn't really have a chance to look at it much either.
And I guess I just want to, I mean, salary, and salary is the thing everybody wants. But are there things that we need to do with the benefits, like have employees, single employees pay a little bit more for healthcare, but then the city provides more for families, like many of our comparators do? And if we want to do that, what's that cost? Because then if we do that, it's all part of the benefits package and it all costs. And so it's a, I don't want to prolong this forever, but I also want to be thoughtful about what it is. I mean, if everybody just wants salary and we want to leave the benefits the same, then that's fine. Or maybe there are benefits that nobody cares about that, I mean, I don't know what benefit we have that nobody cares about, but maybe there's something out there that would free up money. I don't know, but it's a thought that we probably really want to look at. And at I didn't realize on retirement that our non-uniform retirement we're like at there's only one comparator that pays, as small of amount of loggers, like in Brentwood. Like we're at the bottom of that for the non-uniform. So,
If you remember, we brought that, Jason Coates and I brought that to your attention, I think, last year, and it's a substantial cost. And we've been at that, I think, from inception, and it hasn't changed. So it's worthwhile to take a look at that. And I haven't really had a chance to thoroughly review the report, so I'd like to do that. We've also have not even surveyed our employees to get a sense of, you know, what they would like to see change, and then we can do an analysis and see what we can afford. We haven't done any of those exercises, so we probably need an opportunity maybe to meet with Rick and his team and Karen and, you know, have a further discussion and then bring something meaningful back for your discussion.
Because that's really an important part of a job. It's not just the money you take home, it's
All
there's
of
a
it.
lot of it that goes into it, so.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I think that when you look at it, just as we are generous with some parts of our benefit, more so than some of our comparators. But again, to Nancy's point, if we're paying for certain benefits that majority of staff don't really care about, and that could be adjusted, or, you know, kind of leveling it out for some of our employees that, for example, that have families, and maybe I agree with the recommendation that sometimes when so much of the benefit is paid 100% for, say, single staff, they're going to pick the healthcare that's the highest premium, because why not? You know, or the highest coverage and all of that. Whereas if you have some skin in the game with that, like most of us have in the private sector, you've got to look at that and kind of go, well, how much of the premium that I want to spend versus what it's giving me. So, you know, I mean, we tend to pay quite a bit in health and dental coverage, and is that right? You know, so I do think this is an important part of the total compensation that needs to be factored in. Complex.
All right, so do we have I'm thinking down to the next meeting. Do you think that we need a meeting on the 4th, or
Well,
that we
Can we accomplish all that in August, or should we do the benefits on the 23rd, or can we
what
do all that in August?
I'm on vacation.
Oh,
But I think the team can handle that. So I think you can have the meeting on the 23rd.
or to do, I mean, one suggestion would be to do the benefits there, and then we have a sense of but is that enough time to talk to employee? I mean,
Yeah,
this is kind of a big thing.
deal. I don't,
I mean, Tangela will have to create a survey instrument to send that out, and we can discuss that, what it would look like. But we need to read the report first. And we can have that date on the books, and if we have all the information ready and given you sufficient time to review it, then we can go forward with the meeting. If not, we have August.
Yeah, because it's 2 weeks versus 4 weeks, but can you do all, and if we need it the week before, so it's like 10 days to do all that, is that reasonable?
I'm certain everyone here would do the report that I send out, so.
we just want to set up a win in terms of, like, having everyone as ready as possible for the meeting.
I think we'll provide you updates as, you know, we go along. If we can accomplish that, then the meeting will go forward. If not, we'll let you know and you decide.
I mean, they're basically 23rd and the 1st are a week apart, essentially. And so, I mean, if we had a 23rd,
It's 2 weeks, though. Oh, we're the first, always looking
it's
at
the 1st. The next meeting's the 1st.
Yep.
So I guess,
Does it, I mean,
does it,
with that additional 10 days, I mean, though, I mean, this is a scheduling, I think, matter, so if you
I don't want to
tell
make
us-
the scheduled meeting obsolete because we have a meeting on the 23rd, and, well, I mean, I guess that's fine.
I
No,
don't think-
because we're not going to be ready for the revenue discussions anyway, so we still need to meet August 1st regardless.
Right?
Regardless, I guess
Okay, so, you know, somebody else on this team is on vacation as well.
On the 23rd?
Next week.
Next, oh. Like the meeting should be the 1st.
August
So-
1st.
August 1st it is.
I think so.
Okay. All right, so when we come back on August 1st, we will have the benefits presentation analysis, and then we'll have the revenues, and then we'll be able to discuss more about recommendations for percentiles and how we go about affording it. Great. All right, we have no new business, item 6, and then item 7 on the agenda is citizen comments. If there's anyone in the audience, virtually or in reality, that would like to come forward and address the committee, you have 3 minutes. Please just state your name and address.
My name is John Youngblood, familiar with everyone in the room, I hope. I'm a member of the Brentwood Fire Department, former shop steward for 9 years, and I currently serve as the district vice president for Local 2665. I'm here this evening to discuss the compensation study results in hopes that my message brings much-needed change. I say these things with all due respect, but out of frustration and dwindling faith in the city. My message is not only on behalf of the firefighters, but all city employees. Since January 1st of 2016, the city has been operating under a philosophy that has placed Brentwood employees as some of the lowest paid in the region. The majority of these employees have been faithful to the city, going above and beyond what has been asked of us. We provide more and more with less and less. It is no secret that I have been critical of the Higbee recommendations and numbers, but I have intimate knowledge of this region's pay and benefits as I represent 12 of the neighboring cities in the Central Core. For years, I have maintained a spreadsheet that is updated continuously as other cities receive raises and changes in benefits. Brentwood has been one of the lowest paying cities for many years. Not only has our pay been stagnant, but our benefits have been stripped. We no longer receive sick leave buyback. Sick leave accrual rate was cut by 50%, and I believe we have absorbed every insurance premium increase since I have been employed here. Longevity pay was stripped, and COLA raises were taken away. All of these benefits are still very much in practice in many of the comparator cities. To be fair, the benefits I just mentioned and the current pay philosophy was in place before any of you took office. You inherited a problem that I imagine you did not know existed until now. The new pay plan validates all of the concerns we have had for 8 years. I appreciate the board's efforts to move all city employees to the 95th percentile, but as you can see now, we are nowhere near close to that. I want to provide a few examples of how stagnant our wages have been. Over the last 8 years, firefighter medics' wages have only increased a total of 10%. That's an average of 1.37% per year. Captains have only received a 0.5% increase annually for a total of 4% over the last 8 years. And lieutenants' wages have only gone up a total of 3% in 8 years. If the city, that's 0.375% per year. If the city had applied CPI adjustments from 2016 to now, these wages would have increased $26,875. Instead, that position has only seen an increase of $2,700. We recently lost an employee to a fire district. This individual came in with no experience, and we invested a tremendous amount of time and money into him. With an impressive resume, he applied and was picked up right away. He made more his first year as a probationary private than our topped-out captains make. He also receives 100% health insurance premium coverage for his entire family. Many of the guys here tonight still talk to him frequently. They know what the earning potential is out there. I believe that there will be a mass exodus if this pay plan is not addressed and we are not placed in a competitive position. We will lose the time we have invested in our members, which makes the city less safe and our job more dangerous. I heard it asked in the last meeting, should we ask employees in an exit interview why they are leaving? My question would be, why would you wait for an exit interview to find out why your employees are not happy and leaving? I've worked for this city for 11 years, and not one time has anybody asked me any way that the city could make improvements. However, I have proposed many ideas and changes to the city, and all have been denied. These things include a wellness and fitness initiative with a comp time incentive plan. I've also spoken numerous times on the importance of substance abuse and mental health and the issue with the city's policy of one-and-done test results for uniformed personnel. This has all fallen on deaf ears. So to the point of exit interviews, you would ask them why they are leaving. Many of us are asking ourselves, why are we staying? With the recent inflation, our cost of living has never been higher. The city has enjoyed top-tier labor and service while paying bottom-of-the-barrel wages. Our coworkers and our families have endured this for over 8 years. I'm asking the city to make the necessary budget adjustments to bring us near the top and maintain it. I'm also asking the city to honor their word in making this retroactive back to January 1st and give us time and position. The city advertises a 7-year top-out for uniformed personnel and a 12-step for non-uniformed personnel. I'm asking you to honor that as well. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to come forward? Not seeing anyone who's. Oh, always, yeah. There's always a citizen comment. It's usually at the end of the meeting, so you have an opportunity to comment on what we discussed. Is there anyone virtually? All right, see. All right, in that regard, seeing no further business, we're adjourned. I'll see everyone back here on August 1st. Thank you.